The room is quiet, yet deafening. A man sits on the edge of his bed, eyes fixed on a text he hasn't sent, replaying every possible reply, every possible consequence, until the morning light bleeds through his window, and he realizes he hasn't moved. Or he's at a cafe, coffee cooling on the table, watching people laugh, while inside, his mind is staging imaginary arguments with someone who isn't even here. His stomach churns. His jaw tightens. Everyone else seems to just live. Does this feel familiar? Do you ever lie awake at night, mentally rehearsing tomorrow's conversations, and then rewriting them again and again, only to wake up drained? Do you hesitate over choices so small? What to say, what to do, what to wear, yet the weight on your chest feels enormous. You're not alone. Overthinking is a quiet storm, invisible to others, but inside, it floods everything. It turns decisions into battlefields, memories into landmines, relationships into riddles, and yet, it feels responsible, doesn't it? As if thinking more is how you prevent mistakes. But what if this endless thinking is exactly what's stealing your time, your peace, and your presence? Today, we're going to untangle the 7 hidden signs of overthinking that most men miss, and more importantly, how to stop letting them run your life. Because the truth is, no amount of thinking will ever make you feel ready for life. And if you've been watching my videos, you already know, like perfectionism, overthinking wears the mask of control while quietly sabotaging your strength. By the end of this video, you'll start seeing what's really behind the noise, and maybe for the first time in years, feel quiet again. Ready? Overthinking feels like drowning in air. You lie awake at 2 a.m., your body buzzing with unease, replaying what you said at work, wondering if they misunderstood while your pulse thrums in your ears like a clock you can't turn off. You feel exhausted, but restless. You stare at texts before sending them, rewrite emails 10 times, and second-guess even harmless decisions, like which line to stand in at the grocery store. It's not just bad habits. It's a survival instinct hijacked. Society tells you to anticipate, prepare, control everything, but in reality, your mind has turned into an overzealous guard dog, barking at every shadow. In 2000, psychologist Susan Nolan Hawks-Samer conducted a study with a man named Thomas, who came to her clinic overwhelmed by his thoughts. After a breakup, every night, he'd replay the same scene, her walking away, and imagine dozens of ways he could have stopped her. The study showed that his constant rumination didn't help him fix anything. It only deepened his despair. But when Thomas learned to interrupt that loop, his symptoms of depression dropped by 50% within weeks. Why does this happen? Because the mind mistakes rumination for problem solving. As Søren Kierkegaard, Danish philosopher of anxiety, wrote, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Our endless options and fears of making the wrong move trap us in our own minds." So, let me ask you, if your mind is a maze, what are you really afraid you'll find at the center? Sign 1. You play out conversations before they happen. It starts in your head, like a quiet rehearsal for a play no one else has seen. You imagine telling your boss you need more time on a project, and immediately a dozen possible reactions unfold: disappointment, anger, dismissal. So, you practice your words again and again. By the time you actually stand in front of him, your tongue feels heavy because you've already fought and lost 100 invisible arguments. If this sounds familiar, you're not just careful, you're trapped in mental chess. You believe that by predicting every move, you can avoid mistakes. But what actually happens? You speak less, or too late. You leave the conversation feeling like you betrayed yourself. One man, Mark, shared this during a CBT group session in Chicago in 2018. Every morning before leaving home, he'd pace in the kitchen, crafting perfect lines for conversations that never went the way he imagined. He confessed that by the end of each day, he felt hollow, like an actor who never got to step on stage. Psychologists call this anticipatory rumination. Your mind simulates conversations, searching for safety, but the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality, so it experiences every rejection you imagine as if it already happened. And here's the strange part. This constant rehearsal actually weakens your confidence because it convinces you that others' reactions are always a threat. Imagine standing in a dark room, holding a lantern, but instead of walking forward, you spin it in circles, trying to light every corner at once. That's what this sign feels like. So tell me, how many words have you swallowed because you rehearsed them to death? Sign 2. You replay mistakes like a broken record. Some nights you lie in bed, and the room feels smaller, because your mind is replaying something you said months ago. A joke that fell flat. A sentence that sounded sharper than you intended. A silence you should have filled. It loops, the words echoing, like a scratched vinyl record, until you feel embarrassed for things nobody else even remembers. This is called rumination. Psychologists have shown that your brain treats imagined shame almost identically to actual shame, flooding you with cortisol as if the mistake just happened. In 1999, a researcher named Thomas, part of a Harvard study on regret, followed a man named Eric, who kept reliving a disastrous meeting with his father-in-law. Even though years had passed, his pulse spiked each time he thought of it. The more he dwelled, the more he avoided family events, until he finally learned to break the loop by focusing on specific, forward-facing actions. This sign isn't about responsibility. It's about self-punishment, masquerading as reflection. It's like trying to clean a window by rubbing the same dirty spot over and over until the glass cracks. So how many cracks are you hiding behind? Sign 3. You struggle to make even small decisions. You stand in the grocery aisle for 15 minutes, staring at 2 brands of coffee, paralyzed. You hesitate to answer a simple text because you're crafting the perfect reply. This is decision paralysis. Fear of making the wrong choice. Fear of regret. Fear of being judged. Studies show this often happens when your brain is so fatigued by overthinking that it runs out of emotional energy. What scientists call ego depletion. Albert Ellis, creator of ORABT, once said, "The trouble with most people is they think they have to be perfect, which means they can never decide. Think of it as standing before 1,000 doors, afraid that whichever one you pick, the others will collapse behind you. So, which door have you been too afraid to open?" Sign 4. You imagine worst-case scenarios as reality. You get a text saying, "We need to talk," and your stomach drops as you imagine every catastrophe at once. You're convinced they're angry, leaving, or that you've ruined everything. This is called catastrophizing, when your brain mistakes possibility for certainty. It's not just anxiety, it's your nervous system, in survival mode, interpreting uncertainty as danger. In 2016, a Stanford experiment followed a man named Ryan, who panicked every time his boss emailed him, unexpectedly. His therapist walked him through visualizing neutral outcomes. Within weeks, his panic attacks lessened, and he admitted, "I didn't lose my job, I just lost my peace." It's like watching clouds gather and assuming the storm has already struck, when the sky is still quiet. So tell me, how many storms have you already lived through that never came? Sign 5. You overanalyze people's words and actions. You read a text, sure, that works, and you stare at it, dissecting every letter. Does sure mean they're annoyed? Does that works mean they're settling? Why no smiley? You replay conversations, searching for hidden messages. A pause too long, a tone too flat, as if everyone around you is speaking in riddles, meant only for you to solve. This is called hypervigilance, often rooted in a fear of rejection or judgment. Your mind becomes a detective, scanning every interaction for clues of disapproval. In reality, the brain is misreading neutral signals as threats. In 2014, a London therapist worked with a man named Daniel who spent hours each night analyzing co-workers' comments from meetings. When asked how often his fears turned out to be true, he laughed and admitted, almost never. By the end of therapy, Daniel learned to take words at face value, freeing himself from invisible accusations. It's like standing under a magnifying glass, convinced the sunlight is burning you, when really, it's just light. So, how much of what you fear is truly being said, and how much is your own echo? Sign 6. You get stuck in planning, never acting. You draft plans. You color code notebooks. You write and rewrite goals. But when it's time to move, nothing. Instead, you research more, plan harder, wait for the perfect moment. This is the perfectionist's cousin. Analysis, paralysis. It gives the illusion of progress while keeping you safe from risk. In 2020, a coach named Michael worked with a man called Matt, who had mapped out his dream business down to the font on his website, but never launched. When asked why, Matt whispered, "If I don't start, I can't fail." Psychologists call this avoidance through planning, where preparation becomes procrastination. It's like drawing the map of a city so detailed, you forget to ever walk its streets. So what dream of yours is still just lines on paper? Sign 7. You feel mentally exhausted, but accomplish nothing. There are days you close your laptop at midnight, mind buzzing with thoughts, but nothing tangible to show for it. Your body feels heavy, your head foggy, like you've run a marathon, yet you haven't moved an inch. This is what psychologists call cognitive overload, the mental effort of rehearsing, regretting, deciding, catastrophizing, burns through your emotional energy without producing any real outcomes. It's like revving a car engine in neutral, fuel spent, tires unmoved. In 2012, researcher Roy Baumeister followed a man named Jordan, a lawyer who spent hours each day weighing and reweighing arguments in his mind, but rarely filed motions on time. Jordan felt perpetually behind, ashamed, yet too drained to change. After learning to redirect his attention toward one small actionable task at a time, Jordan's productivity and mood improved dramatically. This sign is dangerous because it feeds on itself. The more exhausted you feel, the harder it becomes to focus, and the more you avoid meaningful action. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It's the weight of carrying dozens of invisible what-ifs on your shoulders, until even breathing feels like work. Imagine standing in a river, arms full of stones, trying to keep them all above water, until finally, your arms ache, and you have no choice but to let them sink. So what stones are you still clinging to, afraid to let them fall? If overthinking were just a bad habit, you could simply think less. But it's deeper, a protective pattern of your nervous system, trying to control what feels uncontrollable. Here's how to meet it, with something stronger than thought. Solution number 1, use decision windows, not deadlines. Instead of forcing decisions under pressure, or endlessly delaying them, research from Columbia Business School 2019 found that people who scheduled a window of time to decide, not a hard deadline, reduced their anxiety by nearly 50%. Here's how it works. Choose a 30-minute block when you only focus on that decision. No distractions, no procrastination. If it's not resolved, you close the window and revisit it later, guilt-free. A man named Peter used this when choosing whether to relocate for work. Instead of staying up every night, imagining outcomes, he committed to one decision window per week. By the third window, he chose and never looked back. Solution number 2, practice outcome forecasting. Then test reality. Daniel Kahneman, psychologist and Nobel laureate, taught that our minds overestimate negative outcomes. Try this. Write down the worst thing you believe will happen. Then next to it, write what actually happened after 1 week. This isn't about positive thinking. It's about collecting evidence. Men who've tracked this often discover that 80 to 90% of their fears never come true, and the rest weren't as catastrophic as imagined. Solution number 3. Externalize your mind with cognitive offloading. Researchers at the University of Tokyo 2020 showed that simply offloading your thoughts into external objects, sticky notes, voice memos, even a pile of pebbles for each thought, frees mental space and improves decision-making. One participant, Jonah, began placing a pebble for each thought in a jar. At the end of each day, he emptied the jar, and his head felt lighter too. Overthinking doesn't dissolve by fighting it, but by creating room for choice, testing your fears, and letting your mind breathe outside your body. So, if your thoughts weren't trapped inside you, where would you set them down? You've seen them now, the quiet habits that steal your hours and leave you empty. Rehearsing conversations that never happen, replaying mistakes like scars you can't stop touching, freezing before even small decisions, as if the world will shatter, forecasting storms that never come, reading too much into everyone's words until they sound like riddles, drowning in plans you never act on, collapsing at night, exhausted, with nothing to show but noise. These aren't flaws, they're old defenses that once kept you safe, but they've outlived their purpose. The fact that you recognized yourself in these patterns, that takes courage. You've already begun the work simply by naming them. So let me ask you, not just as a challenge, but as a chance to free yourself. What's the heaviest thought you've been carrying? The one that circles back, over and over. Write it in the comments. Give it a name. Let it out of your head and into the light. And if you're still here, stay close, because next time we'll step into something even more difficult. Why even the kindest men unknowingly harm their relationships, and how it may already be happening to you. If you found even one truth here tonight, subscribe. Not for me, but for the man you're becoming. And remember, as Jean-Paul Sartre, French existentialist who explored freedom and responsibility, once wrote, "Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you." So, what will you do now? You are watching Psychosophy, where psychology meets philosophy.